everybody. This is Paul Herman, the Prince of Motivation and host of Zaka Presents My Journey. We're creating this vulnerable and positive platform where you get inspired and motivated from different leaders from our community. Today, our guest is Sherece Brown, who is the founder of Dr. Pabs Pineapple is a berry. And we are so grateful to have you on the show today, Miss Sherece. Welcome.
Thank you.
I guess. And I also know that you are obviously our Caribbean background. We're going to dive into that, but it's always amazing. And I am Caribbean background myself too. So having another Yachty on the,
Yeah,
the podcast is always a great thing. So welcome to the show again.
thank you so much for having me.
So to dive in, I'm not going to hold you too long, but I want to get into this, right? And I want to let the listeners know a little bit more about your career and where you are currently. But before we do that, give us a little bit more about your cultural background.
So, I am first generation here in the United States. My mother and father are Jamaican.
Come
My
on, clap it up. Clap it up. Clap it
yes,
up.
they migrated to New York City, where I was born.
Hmm.
I was born in the Bronx, New
Come on,
York,
Beats.
and I was raised in Queens.
Oh, wait, hold up. You done throw us off right here. I thought you were going to stay with the Bronx. As you know, I'm a Bronx native myself. So let's.
Listen, it's all love,
Okay,
baby.
okay. All right, I ain't gonna hold you. I ain't gonna hold you. Queens is like my sister block, so we gonna be okay over there.
Everybody got a touchdown in Queens because that's where all the airports are. So, you know,
Yeah, yeah, true, true, true. Oh, that's how you know you're Caribbean. That's down in Queens because that's where the airports are. Okay,
exactly.
okay, okay. So born in the Bronx,
hmm
um, lived in Queens.
Yeah, raised in Queens. I spent a little bit of time in the Bronx, but my formative years were all in Queens.
Okay.
And great schools, great education,
Yep, yeah, yeah.
wonderful New York experience, I would
I
say.
mean, New York's a melting pot. You know.
Yes, we have
melt
everybody.
melting pot, all different walks of life. And I know a lot of Caribbean backgrounds, descent people. They migrate to New York, and obviously I know a lot of them in Queens. A lot of them migrate to Brooklyn, and
hmm
also the Bronx. So it's amazing to see that and hear that. Now, growing up in New York, talk to me a
hmm
little bit more about that. Like, did you feel like you were connected to that Caribbean vibrant energy?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, that is all I knew, Caribbean, because my father, he was a chef and we had breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
Mm,
Jamaican
mm.
food.
You don't know?
We didn't have any McDonald's. There was no, like once in a while we might have some fast food, but really and truly he was about home cooked meals. A lot of the times he was farm to table. Being in Queens, he had a little garden in the backyard where he would make tomatoes. We'd grow tomatoes, green peppers, red peppers, and peppermint leaves, and things of
Hmm.
that nature. So that was my first experience of farm to table, being it from New York. So I mean, and then of course the music and
Mm.
just even like going after high school or after school, having to take the subway to Jamaica Avenue, where it's everything and everybody and all the cultures, and um, then taking the bus from Jamaica Avenue home, where I grew up in Springfield Gardens.
Okay. And what does your culture mean to you? Like obviously I know that everyone has their own understanding and depiction of their culture, but like what does the Jamaican culture like? Because you have both parents being from Jamaica.
Right. So I was immersed in Jamaican culture. There was no two ways about it. And with that came, we resilience, grit,
Hmm.
because obviously being, there, the first generation here in the United States, my parents migrated here. My grandmother brought her 7 children here on her own, alone. My grandfather did not want to make that journey to the United States. He didn't like the cold weather. So he's like, I'm staying
I
here.
don't blame him. I don't blame him
He's like, good
because
luck.
it will creep up on you.
Right, right. But my grandmother had another vision for her family, and she thought this it was a wise decision and coming to the United States. So, with that, my grandmother also had jobs that weren't exactly the most pleasant, because obviously you have to work on getting your paperwork straight and getting into
Yep.
social security and things of that nature. And I remember studying with her to get her what is it called, a citizenship. And
Yep. Yep.
yeah, I remember having my note cards and studying with her so she could pass the test and things of that nature. And she did on the first try. So I was very proud of my grandmother and how hard she worked just to make it here for her kids, which gave me such a good example of hard work and resilience. And yeah, because my grandmother and my mother and father, they had accents, the West Indian accents, sometimes they weren't treated as nicely as everyone else. So that also gave me a point of view, you know, and which definitely molded me in the fact that, this this opportunity that I've given with my life isn't to be wasted.
I like how you're breaking that down and really giving a true understanding of that culture. You know, the Jamaican culture is very vibrant. I think Caribbean culture as a
All of
whole
it. Yeah,
is,
totally.
you know, every island is special. Every island has some, but that Jamaican culture, no matter what, you could pick out a Jamaican wherever you go, you know?
We are very proud people.
Yeah,
And
the vibrant colors, the energy, yeah, and
mhm.
the way they walk, right? They're
Confidence.
like, you can tell that person from the yard. I could see somebody walking across the street, like, yep, Jamaican right there. That individual is Haitian right there. Yep, that's a Haitian walk right there. So it's very beautiful. And I'm glad that it's something that, stayed with you. When you obviously your parents migrated here. I know that's always a hard thing, and all the guests have spoken about it, about when, their parents came to America. Some of them, some of the stories were like they really tried to convert. They were like, look, we can't talk in patois anymore. We can't speak in
Mhm.
Creole anymore. We need to
Mhm.
stop doing that because we have to be embedded in
Assimilated.
that
Mhm.
in American culture. And I know that's scary
It
to
is.
know that is something that people are looking to do, and it's very hard. So how did you? Was that? I'm assuming that wasn't something that your family was looking at doing. They were like, no, we're going to stay true to our Jamaican culture.
Well, we did stay true to our culture. Like in my house, we were listening to Bob Marley, Buju Banton, like
Mm,
certain music. A lot of the music was, my grandmother was very spiritual, so she would listen to her spiritual music, and but my father was very adamant about us being educated. Well, us being my sister and I, and taking our education very seriously.
mm, mm,
He did not get the opportunity to go to college. They migrated here when he was 18, and my grandmother obviously couldn't afford to send him to college. So he went to trade school. So it was my household was we were going to college. There was not, he would always say there's no two ways about it. It's not
true, true.
as a West
I
Indian,
ain't gonna knock 'em.
you don't have a choice. You're going to school. You're going to
Yeah.
be productive. And speaking clearly and articulating yourself clearly was also very important to him. But, you couldn't hide. There was no hiding or um being not proud of being West Indian descent. That was our culture. Like there was never a time that I felt like I couldn't tell anyone that I was Jamaican.
Mm, mm, sad. And a lot of the guests have said that. They were like, "Look, I didn't want to say I was Haitian." You know,
No, I mean, I love
I,
my Caribbean. Everybody. Like especially the history that Jamaica has, and the history, and especially the slave history that we have, as far as Haiti being the first what's the word I'm looking for, being the first free.
first for independence.
Exactly. And then obviously Jamaica become, getting their independence is, and it is said that the Caribbean people were the hardest slaves to break.
Hmm.
That
Hmm.
says something about us. That says something about our culture, our lineage, like the way I talk, the way you talk, the way we laugh, that was already made in our DNA. That's embedded in our DNA. So the strength that comes from our culture isn't we weren't just given it. It was something down the line that was passed in our lineage. It was something to be proud of,
Mm,
something that you've got it. It's vested in you. The strength is vested in each and every one of us. So
mm, mm. You speaking
that is
like your
what I was.
grandmother. You speaking like your grandmother right now. Sound like I'm just like, hold on, you about to take me to church with this one. You said she was very spiritual. I said, hold on now. You don't bust. You getting it. You getting it. That's good. But you are right. You are right. You are right. We come from kings and queens, and a lot of our immigrant background. No matter where people come from, there was an era of time where your that culture was there was kings and queens,
Mhm.
right? And then there was
Mhm.
obviously the slave trade and all that stuff that had happened, and people sometimes forgot that that was a time in our lives and our history and
Oh,
our lineage.
absolutely. And
So
we are all one. We've all
yeah,
of us, most of us, we are African. We that's Jamaica was one stop on the slave drop off.
yeah,
Haiti was
yeah.
another stop. So so we're all one people.
Mm, One love, one heart. Let's get together.
All right, Bob.
Come on and be all right. That is right. And that brings me to my next question to you for you. What when you look back at your childhood, what are some of the values and lessons that your Jamaican immigrant parents kind of instilled in you to kind of be the individual you are today?
Wow. Again, I go back to grit and not running away from adversity. It's not, we know the game is fixed, right? So with the game being fixed, you just have to work harder. You have to work smarter. You just, I know that we are emotional, spicy people. West
Mm,
Indian people, we are spicy. We, we talk with vibrance and energy. And for me, I had to learn how to separate that, especially in business. Especially in business, I've learned that, with my culture that is a spicy and passionate and energetic in business, you have to kind of pull that back and be less emotional, direct but kind in
yeah,
that nature. And with my culture, and what I've learned is that I bring a different point of view to what I'm presenting to the world. Like, it's a different point of view, a well needed point of view. Especially with my Rastafarian. I was partly raised not like a Rastafarian, but we ate a lot. We consumed a lot of seafood, a lot of greens, a lot of herbs. I don't know if you had to deal with Cersei as a kid, but in my household, we were given Cersei. It is a bitter. If anybody's listening and don't know what that
yeah,
it
yeah.
is, a bush
Oh,
that they would, boil, and you'd have to drink it like a tea. We would have it
yeah.
every 6 months. It's terrible, but very good for you. It tastes and smells horrible. And things of
Yeah.
that nature of us going to the land to cure ourselves, going to, the earth to medicate our bodies. I wouldn't change it for the world.
hmm That's something I really admire about that, the Rastafarian um, culture and how they really are embedded in the earth and like really healing themselves every single day. You're sick, you got a cold, you got the flu. There's an herb, there's a tree, there's a plant, there's something to cure that, and I think that's phenomenal. To even, uh, you know, medicine is a multi-billion-dollar industry, you know. But to know that there's individuals out there that believe in the earth and what the earth provides and how we need to work with it and not against it. It's beautiful to hear that kind of stuff. So
Absolutely. Like, I grew up not consuming pork. So it's also right now in my life, I don't consume pork, I don't consume beef. So that is why I wanted to create something that was inclusive, because it was hard for me at a point in my life going to the vitamin store, going to the store and trying to find products for me that did not contain gelatin. And a lot of people don't know gelatin is pork byproduct. Um, and so that is why I decided to start my company with making sure that it is plant-based and it can anyone can have it, anyone can consume it, anyone can try it and not be surprised about the ingredients and upset about what it has because either it's whether it be religion or just choice, personal choice, of not consuming beef or red meat or pork or anything like that. That's where my thought process was, coming
Mhm.
taking my story you know, from plant to table, for those things and things of that nature.
Mhm. Mhm. Now, I know we're gonna dive a little bit more into that, but like let's talk about like corporate America. I know that you had an intensive amount of years working with corporate. I believe it was around like 16, maybe
Yeah.
plus years of just working in corporate. Talk to me about that moment in life where you're working in corporate and you're like, I need to you had a realization. You were like, I need to pivot. I need to do something that's gonna align more with my passion and health and wellness. Like corporate is, especially for the immigrant background, our parents say you got to be a business owner, a lawyer, a doctor, or something with a uniform, right? It's got to be something like that, and then you finally get there and your parents are probably rooting for you and they're like, woo, you finally made it. All of our blood, sweat, and tears went into making this happen, and you say, I'm out. Like, talk to us. Like, give us your perspective on how this went down because some of these conversations didn't go out too well.
Well, let me tell you.
Okay, here we go. It's about to spill the tea.
Um, when I was like maybe in elementary school or junior high school, my father would say to me, think of a business you want to start. I mean, I'm like 11, 12. I don't know. Like, what could I possibly do as an 11-year-old? But he planted the seed, right? He planted the seed. I then went on to college, graduated college, started my career, but I always had this knack for business. I was very interested in it, but I just didn't know what I wanted to do. I didn't know what I wanted to focus on. I didn't know what I was could be good at. I just had no idea. And then after college, landing a internship, I was a paid intern for one of the large networks in New York, TV networks, and then worked my way up. Now that was my focus. I worked my way up to become a staff employee, TV director, TV associate director,
Mm,
and but that bug was still in my ear, that notion of think of a business that you want to start. Be your own boss. Nobody
mm,
can fire you but you. Like this is the story in the background of my life. So I used my corporate job was my very first investor in my business. And I used that and I thought if I can go to work to somebody else's job and I can help them for 8 hours secure whatever family goals, life goals that they wanted to secure, I can do that for myself. I could come home, I could do another 4 hours for myself, another 5. So then I started to formulate the plan of, okay, instead of going on girls trips, instead of vacation, instead of buying myself these beautiful purses and fancy, shoes. I devoted part of my salary to building my business.
mm,
And
mm,
then I'm still being promoted at my job. Opportunities are coming to me left and right with the job. It's the gold they call it the golden handcuffs. It's
mm, mm.
like why start a business when I have a job that I go to every day? But no, that job can say, we no longer want you here. We
That
no
is correct.
longer need you. You don't fit the bill. Um, that job, the CEO could change and decide that he wants to bring in someone else, and things of that nature can all happen. And it did. I was laid off, but I was grinding outside of work. I was starting my businesses, preparing my logos. I was, formulating the plan and executing the plan as I am getting promoted, and then bam, I get I get let go. And it's almost like a sign, like, okay, you've been doing this. You've been burning the candle at both ends. Maybe, and not maybe, it's time to focus in on your real goal, on your vision, on,
Mm,
my father planted the seed and I started to water it. And now we have this full blown tree.
okay.
Yeah.
And that's good at that early age. Your father's saying that. That's that.
Think
I
about a
mean,
business you want to
that's a
start.
little that's a little scary,
It's
but
intense.
it's a little intense.
Mhm.
But it is good to know that he was a forward thinker.
Yeah.
You know, he was so right. I mean, and because he was witnessing it firsthand. He probably saw himself, his coworkers. People jobs were on the line, people getting fired left and right. Obviously AI and technology that probably wasn't a factor back then, but I mean things like that were talked about. So he was probably like, look, I need to make sure that all of my kids are successful at doing something
Yes.
because
I mean,
who knows?
right. And luckily, my dad was an entrepreneur. I told you when he came here, he went to he came to the United States, he went to trade school, and then he had interests in music, and he did music not as an artist, but as a promoter and things of that nature. My mother, she also had businesses and things of that nature. So I had that example. I had that example. So, with business, some people feel like it's all peachy. No, it's not. I was there to see very hard days because you're depending on this business venture to go through, or this business meeting to really go well, and maybe it didn't, and now you can't pay your bills. So I saw the both sides of it, and but my parents were resilient and they pushed through. So
That's it.
even when I might do not a real fancy month, and I'm still doing the promoting part of my business, and it still feels good because nothing happens overnight. You have to put the work in.
True, true. That is true. It's gonna take time. It's gonna take time, and you definitely put that work in. What was like some of the toughest challenges you, or even in regards to that transition, leaving from corporate, opening your own business, being an entrepreneur? Like, what was some of the transitional challenges that you faced that you could kind of like lay out for our listeners?
Oh, it's all very challenging. I mean, there is no real blueprint, right? So a lot of it is trial and error. And, if I say, for instance, I am, getting my inserts for my boxes, which includes what's in the vitamin. Say, for example, vitamin A, which is good for the eyes, vitamin omega-3, which is good for the hair and skin, vitamin D, which is good for the bones. But somebody has to be there to spell check that stuff. Somebody has to be there to say this, the arrow doesn't point to the eyes. The arrow should be pointing here, or bones is misspelled, or things of that nature. And because I am working at this tirelessly, you can miss things if you're not careful. And I think
True.
was one time I might have ordered 2,000 inserts, and now it's wasted because it's misspelled. It's like, oh my God, how could I have missed that? You know what I'm saying? Like, now that's in the trash because bones is misspelled. So those are the things that come about, or, it's very important. I would tell everyone that's just starting out. It's very important to get your paperwork in order. If you want to start a business, you have your name of the business with your logo, trademark your stuff, because it's someone else can come in and swoop that
Yeah,
from you and take that from you, all of your hard work. Um, you know, so I'd say all of it is hard for me, but it's part of the journey. It's part of the journey knowing that I'm doing something meaningful.
that. That is always important. I tell people all the time, and a lot of the guests that have been on the show highly, highly recommend that. They're like, look, you know what? I wouldn't change it for the world. Like
Mhm.
your happiness is crucial, especially in the day of age that we're in right now. Right,
Right.
with all the stress, the drama, all the negative influences that we are facing in our everyday lives, right?
And
You
stress
gotta,
kills.
yeah, stress, yeah, it really does. It puts wrinkles on you, aches and pains start to kick in, and it affects the relationships around you as well, whether it be your family members, your partner. So it's important to find those things that truly make you happy and bring life, breathe life into you versus take
Right.
life out of you. So I'm always happy to hear when our guests come on and say, "Well, I was in corporate and I was doing pretty good." It wasn't like you were you were uh, doing a bad job. It wasn't
Mhm.
like you were like, "I'm in corporate and I was failing miserably and I had to leave." You were just like, "No, I can't see myself doing this for the rest of my life."
I'm building someone else's legacy when I could be building and helping my own.
Hmm,
What's
hmm.
more important to me?
How did you when you identify? Obviously, you identify as a daughter of a Jamaican immigrant or Jamaican immigrants, right? What is some of the approaches in business and leadership that like you've kind of like pulled from them to make this work for you?
I would say in our culture, we are confident people. So when you enter the room and when I enter business meetings, I don't cower, especially being a woman, because that's a lot of the times people want you to feel like you don't belong there. I belong here. I'm here for a reason. And that confidence attracts people to you. And they want to know your story. They even maybe want to lend you a helping hand as far as putting you in contact with someone that could possibly help you go further. So I think that with the confidence that I was given from my culture, my parents, and just my heritage of knowing that I belong here, we belong here too, especially being immigrants,
Yeah,
that helped me feel relaxed. It helps me relax instead of cowering or being too shy or, timid to ask a question, talk to people, introduce myself to people. Because if people don't know who you are and what you're doing, how can they support you?
true, true. Closed mouths don't get fed.
Exactly. Exactly.
You know that New York lifestyle right there.
Exactly.
In school, your teachers say that. You're like, what? You go home, your parents say, you're like, what? This New York lifestyle.
Exactly.
Yeah. And correct me if I'm wrong, you went to Howard University?
I did. I went to Howard
Okay.
University in
Howard
Washington.
University. And what was your degree? What did you major in?
I studied acting for television and film.
Mm.
My senior year, I took a directing class, and I was like, "Okay, now this is what I wanna do. I want to direct, whether it be TV, film, theater, I want to direct." And so when I moved back home after graduation, that is what I pursued, and I became a TV director.
Oh, wow. Now, phew, you were just doing it all.
I
you,
Well,
you,
there's
you
some people
done,
who are multifaceted,
you done
and
snuck that up on us. You know, I'm obviously reading that bio, and I'm like, okay, I'm trying to get this. How is this even registering right? But even for our listeners listening right now, they probably would have been like, oh, she went to business school,
no, I would
right?
I didn't. I thought about it. I romanced the thought. I wanted to because when my father planted that
Yeah,
seed of
that's what I'm
think
saying.
of a
Yeah,
business you want to start, but I was like, okay, but there's so many at that time. I'm 18, 17, and going into school, college, and I'm just not understanding what to do. My thought process was I had to figure out what kind of business, then pursue that.
yeah. It
I
does. It does take time to figure it out.
Right. And so I'm like, I don't want to do business administration. What does that really mean? So I did have the theater bug. I remember wanting to be a fly girl. I don't know if you
Oh
remember.
yeah,
I
come on,
wanted
live in color.
Yes, on Living
Come
Color.
on.
I
Yo,
wanted to be a fly girl, and then I started taking dance and theater and acting classes and so on and so forth,
it's
and that drove
graduated from college like I want to be a fly girl.
well, I wanted to be a fly girl before I got to college.
Oh, okay, okay. I can imagine your parents sitting at home like, what did you
You
just
know, it's
say?
so funny because my father was very supportive with like, he's like, "If that is what you want to do." Now, I didn't say fly girl, I wanted to be an actress, an actor, and if that is what you want to do, pursue
Smart
it.
move. Smart move. If he would have sold some of them outfits they were wearing, he would have made you not gonna be anything fly.
You know, it's so funny because after graduation, um, and I was interning, I also bartended for a while. And my father, when I was living at home in New York, and he would say, "I didn't send you to school to be a bartender." Now, no shade
Mm.
to any bartenders
True,
out
true, true.
because you can make a good living. But my father was like, excuse me.
We're not doing that.
I didn't send you to school to be a bartender."
And
I'm
you're like,
like,
wait,
I know you didn't, but
I'm
I'm
just trying to
talking
find
about
my way
something
through.
else.
Sometimes our immigrant parents do get a little impatient, right?
Mm,
They're like, wait, hold on, what's going on? What are we doing?
right,
They knock on
right,
your door when you're just relaxing. Why are you relaxing? You should be
right.
reading a book right now. You should be listening to a podcast because they are so eager to make it work for us before we wanted to make it work for ourselves.
Right. They
They
have
are
the vision.
they're our biggest fans sometimes and our biggest supporters. A lot of the students that I do coach and mentor, they always get so upset with their parents. But I'm like, I need you to understand that energy your parents possess, that's like your number one fan right there. You don't even know it. It's just that they do it in a very immigrant parent lifestyle.
Right.
Where it's like we didn't have this, and you have the privilege. I'm working so hard to give it to you. They want something in return,
Mhm.
right? It's an investment, right? And
Mhm.
they're very aggressive on their investment. They're like, you need to make this happen tonight, right?
Exactly.
If you're
Are
going to
you a
go to
doctor yet?
college, straight A's. You're like, what? Straight A's?
Mhm.
I don't even like this class. But you know what? That's what happens. That is what happens.
Like, my father would be like, what does that have to do with anything?
They're right. I don't know that word. Do you feel like your experience at Howard University helped you when it came to corporate and when it came to your entrepreneurship?
Oh, absolutely, because it's about relationships. It's about relationships. And some people like to, you know, um, I would say try to merge relationships upward when you should merge relationships across. Like it's your classmate that you're going through the 4 years with. It's their friends, then becomes your friend because now that person is now the A&R at this company
Yeah.
and need an internship or things of that nature. A lot of it is relationships, and we should build those and nurture those, and not just to gain anything from it, but water them because you never know, how you can help someone else or how, they can help you or help your family member or get your sister this internship or get your brother this job. It's relationships.
Mm-hmm.
And Howard taught me that. Howard taught me that I had to be better. It just is not good enough just to be good. You have to be better than your opponent. And, at these, you know, um, all white institutes, you
Yeah.
have to be better. And not just better, but also you can be nice, kind. There are a lot of
Mm-hmm.
times others would try to maybe intimidate you or make you feel like you do not belong, but you do. You absolutely do. And you have the right to be there. And that is what Howard taught me. Um, and I would never change that for the world.
Mm-hmm. Well, congratulations on that degree and really applying it, and finding ways to it. Which brings me to the next thing, let's talk about this pineapple is a berry. Right? I want to dive into that because first off, the name catches me,
I
right?
love that. Thank you.
Yeah, the name. I was reading the Bible. I was like, okay, pineapple is a berry. I said, okay, let's go for this, right? And talk about like how it aligns with the mission of Dr. Pat's.
So I started this company from my very first company. My very first company is a medical goods distribution company on the island of Jamaica. And then from that, with me wanting to help people. So here we are. I figured it out. I figured out what business I wanted to pursue. And that happened in COVID. In COVID, I'm scrolling the social media. I don't remember what it was, either it was Instagram or I'm scrolling. And I'm home for 4 months during COVID because the type of job that I have to go in office. And as COVID,
Hmm.
people were just, if you didn't have to be here or we could figure some things out, stay home, right?
Yeah.
And I remember seeing a woman on in Jamaica, and she was crying and bawling out that because of COVID and because of the not being able to get medications from across the world, she did not know how she was going to administer her insulin. And that hit me hard because my grandmother had diabetes. And from diabetes, she developed high blood pressure. From high blood pressure and the medications that she was given from the doctors, she could not maintain a healthy weight. So my grandmother's no longer with us, and she's my inspiration. She's my inspiration because I want to do something how I can help. And that was when you asked me about the hardest thing that I did in business was start a business in another place that I am. I go there to visit, I go there on vacation, I go to see my other families and friends of that and things of that nature, but I started a business in somewhere that I'm not completely familiar with, especially the government. It's different than the United States. It's not simple. There's more paperwork, which prepared me to start this Dr. Pabs Pineapple as a berry. So here I am. I started this company, this medical goods distribution company, and I'm flying back and forth. Like I said, instead of taking my vacation for my birthday trip, I'm going to Jamaica. I'm taking my flights, setting up my company, setting up my warehouse and things of that nature. And then I have a big break. I was able to distribute some of my medical goods, and that helped me start Dr. Pabs Pineapple is a Berry. For those who do not know what that stands for, Dr. Pabs is pineapple is a berry. It's an acronym. And even although I am not a doctor, I have medical doctors on the board of my company and food scientists that I go to with my formulation, and we talk about shelf life. We talk about what's needed. I started to go to conferences that doctors attended and talk to these doctors and about patients that are coming into their offices and what's needed and what's happening with these kids who may not or not exposed to eating healthy or not having or not taking vitamins and stuff, things of that nature. And I decided that I want to start kids right now, a kids vitamin company. And a lot of people don't know. And then you asked me about the name. Pineapples are actually berries. And I wanted that to be a conversation starter. I wanted that to be an interesting thing. You don't buy the vitamins, you don't support, but at least pineapples are actually berries.
That's crazy.
Well, I'm glad I
Literally,
could help.
you look at blueberries, strawberries, and you have pineapple.
There are a host of berries that have fused to a central stalk. And I loved it. Before one of my grandmothers passed away, I talked to her. Like I'm just ingrained in my, culture and my in the elders of my family, the matriarchs, and I would always go to them and ask their opinions and, just any type of advice or guidance because they've been here. They've seen it. They've seen so many things that I haven't seen yet.
True.
Why not? So when I talked to my grandmother about, I'm thinking of naming this company Dr. Pabst Pineapple is a Berry, she absolutely loved it, and I had no choice but to go forth with it.
Mm, mm, I love it. I love it. I love it. I like how you breaking that down. It makes you think too. Because when I saw it, I was like, "What's going on over here?" I
She's
said,
making it
I can't wait until I get on this call and figure this out." And I know our listeners, obviously, when they look at your resume, your bio, they're probably going to be asking the same thing, but they're going to be catching on to this. So congratulations on that. And how many years have you been doing this?
So Dr. Pabs is fairly new. Before I launched it, I took time, and like I said, getting the formulation together, talking to the doctors and the food scientists. Consumed the vitamins for a year, making sure that it was exactly what I wanted. Omega-3 and omega-6 was very important right now with the studies that are out that it helps with the brain. Like we're giving these kids a leg up. We're giving them armor to take on the world with just excitement and health. So that is, and I want to get kids excited about taking care of their bodies. Like we talked about earlier about my father having a garden in the backyard and
Yeah.
him growing all these, herbs and bushes and teas. But I had the sniffles sometimes when I would go to school and I'm like mingling with my classmates and play with my friends. So when he implemented and started giving us vitamins, it went away. So that also started to have me start the wheel started churning. I'm like, okay, let's go back to the basics about what I can relate to, what I can talk about, what I can say that I've lived. We ate healthy, we did healthy things, but your immune system still needs the support to keep
Yeah.
it strong, right? And since we're in the time of all these, COVIDs and the flu season and what the kids are in school mingling and playing with their friends, you want to give them the best armor possible to live their full life and healthy life,
Mhm.
especially when I learned that 20.7% of children are affected by heart disease, obesity, and diabetes, with a high number of that being Black children. Like, I want to change that. I want to
Mhm.
get kids, excited about their health. I did not like broccoli as a kid. I love broccoli now,
Oh,
but,
I'll be going down on my broccoli. Little stir
exactly.
fry.
And we were picky eaters. Like, you
Yeah.
couldn't get me to stop eating. My favorite cereal was Apple Jacks. You couldn't get me to stop eating Apple Jacks. Um,
Mm.
but if I could do something to change the outcome of us being affected by these terminal diseases, then my job here is done.
Mm. Mhm. No, I think that's a very honorable mission.
Thank
That's a
you.
big mission. It's a big message, big mission. That's a big cross to carry, right? So, to be able to be like, look, I want to make a difference, and not even just a difference in like a community of people. You're talking about the world,
Mm,
right? You're not even talking about, let me just help out people in Jamaica. Like the work that you're doing doesn't goes well past the ocean to the next country, the next continent. Where other kids are facing the same issues, and what you're talking about doesn't necessarily mean it doesn't relate to someone being black, white, Spanish, Asian. It's just kids in general.
mhm.
Obviously, like you said, there's a good amount of them that are suffering from these terminal illnesses that are of African American descent, but that's based off of what's put in front of them.
Mhm.
I remember growing up in the Bronx, like going to these bodegas and only seeing certain things. There wasn't a Whole Foods in the Bronx at the time. I mean, maybe there is now, but
But
that
we
was
put
not
it
the case. And not saying Whole Foods is better than Bodega, but at the
in.
same time, we were limited to the amount of things we could have at that time. Now think about it. That's our childhood. We're talking
Yeah.
about 12, 13, 14, 17 years of our lives, eating the same type of food, going to the same type of stores. And if our parents were able to provide a healthier meal, and that was at graduation, that was at a family function. That was maybe at Thanksgiving, Christmas, where you were like, woo, we got cauliflower, we got broccoli, we got carrot, we got corn. You got all these vegetables on the table, but on a normal day, it's probably like one veg, right?
Hallelujah.
That's right. That's right. It's easy to make. Because you got to
Mhm.
feed a whole family.
Mhm.
So what you're doing is definitely honorable, and I commend you for the work that you're doing and the people you've been connecting with in order to make this work. Because it's not like you're just like, I'm just going to do it. You're finding the right people,
Right. The
right
people that are
coaches,
smarter
the
than
right
I am,
mentors. You know what I'm saying? You're like, I could do it, but I can't do it alone. And that's
Amen.
something that I'm really catching from that story. And I think that's something that goes back to your childhood and how your family was very tight. And how your father was like, look, what do you want to be? You want to own your own business. Like he was already telling you at a young age, like, I want you to get there, but I'm gonna help you get there. I'm gonna start having
Mhm.
this conversation with you so I could kind of like predict this narrative with you. So kudos to you and your team because it's a big job. a really big job. I know that we talked about a little bit about the immigrant household and about the common, I want to say the common jobs that they were looking for us to have. Like, what do your parents think about, you know, you now?
Well, me finally making it to direct television after I worked my butt off to, climb those ladders and then hitting the glass ceiling for one company being laid off. You know, when you're driven, sometimes you don't sit back, relax, and as corny as it sounds, you don't smell the roses like, oh, I did that. I did that. Because it's always like the next task. It's like, oh, I got to do this. I got to achieve this. I got to, you don't slow down and sometimes pat yourself on the back. And lucky for me, it was maybe a few years ago, my aunt said to me, Sherece, you should be very proud of yourself. You've done this at this age. So, don't be hard on yourself. Hug that girl. Give that girl a kiss because you're doing an amazing job. And you don't be too hard on yourself. Give yourself grace, give others grace. And I would say that I can say that my family's really proud. They're proud anyway, but they're proud of me. The fact that it was, a lot of West Indian, a lot of some Jamaican people, even in my family, they didn't get the opportunity to go to college, even go to high school. They may have had children early. Literacy can be considered, low. And the fact that we have in our history as Black people who died for us to be able to read,
Oh
people
yeah.
died for us to be able to go to college. I think of that. I think of them making sure that I know that I'm making them also proud, not just my immediate family. Um, so I'm very lucky to have my family that supports me and is proud of me, and I know that I make them smile, I make them happy. You know,
Mm,
I hate when they brag, but I can't stop that.
come on, come on,
It's
come on.
Jamaican people.
That's right. Come on. When they proud, they proud.
Yeah,
What impact are you looking to make in this world beyond like the physical health thing?
it's beyond physical health. It's always like I tell myself, make the change in the world that you want to see. Like, what if whatever it is that you want to see, make that change. And to say that I'm building something for my grandchildren and their grandchildren that's the change. We didn't bring strife and hardship to the world. It's all love. Like my grandmother would say, prevention is better than a cure. And here we are. I'm doing something because I don't have my grandmother here with me. I can't say, Grandma, I did this in your name. I want you to know this is for you
She's
because,
watching. Trust me.
because of her
She's
diet.
listening to this podcast as we speak right now.
Thank
She's
you.
like clapping up. She's like, "That's my girl.
Thank you, Grandma.
Come on, that's my girl."
So, you know, with her as my inspiration, I can say that that is what I want to leave the world like she made a difference here.
Mm, mm. Leave an impact. Leave an impact, and not an impression. You know what I'm saying? Come
Exactly.
on. The impression is like, ah, we okay, you cool. They forget about you, right? But the impact is like, wow,
And it's lasting.
that made a difference. And we
Yeah.
need more individuals like yourself stepping up to the plate to really try to make a difference in this world. And it's one step at a time, one podcast at a time, but your voice needs to be heard, right? Because especially if you're the one carrying the message, you can't. Like we talked about, closed mouths don't get fed. If you're the one carrying the message, why would you not speak it out loud? Why would you not
Mhm.
wear it proudly and walk the streets and travel the world, letting people know exactly the true benefits to eating healthy? From the backyard tomato to the table.
Yes.
you know That
Yes,
stuff is important. And you
our
when you said that at least 3, 4 times on this podcast, and I'm saying to myself, like, what am I growing in the backyard right now? Do I got
yeah.
any tomatoes? Do I got cilantro? Do I got I'm really saying to myself, like, you better start growing something.
Well, also, we have to be careful what we're putting into our bodies because that's what affects us. That is, with the diabetes, how do you develop that? It's from what we're eating. The high blood pressure, not only is stress, but it's from what we're eating. The obesity, which is heavy on the heart,
Yeah.
it's all about what we are consuming, not only eating, listening, reading. It's all of that. It's all encompassing.
Mm,
So we just have to be cognizant about even just a little change if you can. If because I know sunflower seeds and sour powers and chocolate, it's all
mm,
very, very satisfying. But in
yeah.
the long run and in longevity, we should, be cognizant of what we're doing to our bodies.
Mhm, mhm. And that leads me to this last question for you, because you've been dropping a lot of gems on this podcast, and
Call me
I
Jam
I
Joppa.
I appreciate that because it's important to share that knowledge and that wealth of knowledge that you have, especially when you reach a certain place in your career where you could actually share it and really give like some concrete understanding and feedback to someone else in need, right? And that's why I asked you this question: what advice would you give to another, you know, immigrant woman, of a daughter of another immigrant, who's looking to pursue their career, right? Their passion. They've obviously found their calling in life, right? Like how you found that calling, and they need to make that transition. They need to make that leap of faith. What would you say to them?
I would never tell anyone to leave their corporate job or to leave their 9 to 5 and pursue a business until they know that business is could cover all their bills. So I would say if you can, do what I did. Keep your corporate job, keep your 9 to 5, and slowly on the weekends or on your off days, start to build your job. I mean, start to build your business. I would, like I did, get a checklist of all the steps that you need to achieve. If you can do it once a week, do something once a week, once a day. Just keep chucking along and checking it off. Study, talk to people, get advice, find a mentor. Um, surround yourself with like-minded people. Surround yourself with people who are smarter than you. Surround yourself with people who love you and want to see you succeed, not succeed just enough, or they want to see you even get better than them. They, get around people like that because iron sharpens iron.
Mm, mm-hmm. Mm. That was the punchline right there. That was the one. That was the one.
Like,
That's when you just drop the mic and just log off.
goodbye.
Goodbye. I done said it. Thank you, Grandma. Well, Sherece, thank you so much for just being present and really sharing your journey, your passion, the knowledge as well too. Like really diving in and expressing about like people's, your health. It starts with our helping our kids understand the value. And if you can start early in an early age, think about what you're doing. You're going to trying to get vitamins and do things for kids to make them understand the value of health. It somewhat runs parallel to your father sitting with you that day and saying you need to own your own business. He knew that there was a big lack of like security when it comes to corporate America, when it comes to having your own working for somebody else. You now have become like your father. And instead of going back to just you in a sense like a daughter or a son, you're going back for the world.
Thank you.
You are tapping in and you're like, you know what, dad, you gave me that advice. Grandma gave me this advice. And now I can't just hold it for myself and my kids. I need to go further out. And I
Mhm.
need to, and I'm glad you're going back home to Jamaica as well, too, to help out. Sometimes
Yeah.
people leave their country and they never go back. They're like, I'm in America now. I'm in London. But to have you go back and to help on a consistent level, we talked about it on a offline about going back into Jamaica and how you did a book bag drive and girl, you
Yes.
were just slaying away. So I'm just gonna send you a lot of blessings, praises, and I'm just throwing it out to you right now because
I received it.
you are a doer. You
Thank
are a
you.
doer. You obviously are a follower, but you're an amazing leader. So congratulations and thank you for being on the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, and I want to let the listeners know if you want to hear more inspirational stories like Sherece, please check us out on ZakaConnect.com. Follow us on our social at Zaka Connect and follow our feed, Zaka, wherever you listen to your podcasts.